Well, guys, chapter 11. If you made it this far, then you really want to hear what happens in this book just like I do. Well, I've actually read this book 2 other times. This is my third time reading this book. But still, it's been a while, and I don't know exactly what happens. I mean, I know the plot, but I don't know exactly what happens, if you know what I mean. So, chapter 11 Parent Conference. Failure! I had opened to hit the floor with Mr. Smith's face in my hand and Broxholm's real mug exposed for all the world to see. Instead, I ended up with a handful of air and a bump on my head. So, if you don't remember, chapter 10, she was at school and she tried to pretend to faint and grab Mr. Smith's slash Broxholm's ear and peel his face off. But she said it was a failure and it didn't work. The other kids in the class shouted and jumped to their feet. Smith slash Broxholm waved them away. He told Mike Foran to get to the nurse. Then he told me to see if I. Then he knelt over to see if I was all right. He was acting so tender and concerned that I almost felt bad for trying to pull off his face. But all I had to do was think of Miss Schwartz trapped in that force field in the attic, and any guilt I might have felt just floated right away. Susan, are you all right? He asked, fanning my face. I moaned and fluttered my eyes. What happened? I asked. You fainted, said Broxholm. He patted the side of his head. Almost took my ear with you, he added. He gave me a cute little smile that showed the dimple on his right cheek. Between the two of us, the air was thick with fake innocence. Was it really possible he didn't know what I was up to? A minute later, Mike came running back with Mrs. Glacka, puffing along behind him. She checked my pulse, felt my forehead, and then helped me to her office to, surprise, lie down. And she also decided to call my mother. This meant that I had to go home and then to the doctor's and then spend the rest of my afternoon in bed with my mother fussing and worrying. She even decided that I had to spend the evening in bed too, after she brought my supper to my room. Gracious, Susan, she said when she burst through the door. The place looks like an explosion at a garage sale. Can't you keep it a little neater? I was planning to clean it today, I said, only I didn't feel up to it after I fainted. Poor baby, she said, setting the tray on my nightstand. She seemed so pleased I decided not to tell her I had been kidding. She never could understand that I liked my room the way it was. After supper, I slipped out of bed and went to see my father. He was sitting in his den building a model of the Empire State Building out of toothpicks. That's his hobby, making famous buildings with toothpicks. If you ask me, it's pretty weird, but it keeps him happy, which is more than I can say for most adults I know. So I guess I shouldn't complain. Hi, Pook, he said when I walked in. Feeling better? I nodded, not wanting to tell him I hadn't been feeling bad to begin with. I sat down next to him and started handing him toothpicks. So what's on your prepubescent mind tonight? He said, holding up a toothpick and dabbing a bit of glue onto the end of it. Dad, I said, but that's all I could think of. I tried, but I couldn't bring myself to explain the situation. After a full minute of silence, he turned to me and said, Are you all right, Susan? I knew he was really concerned because he let the glue on the end of his toothpick dry out while he was waiting for me to answer. I'm fine, I said at last. Well, not exactly fine. I've got a problem. What kind of problem? He asked. He put his toothpick down and gave me his full attention. This was terrible. Can you imagine trying to tell your father that your teacher is an alien? He was going to think I was out of my mind. But I had to do something. So I took a deep breath and said, It's about Mr. Smith. He nodded, inviting me to continue. Look, I tried. I really did. But I just couldn't bring myself to say the words, my teacher is an alien. After a long, uncomfortable silence, I finally said, I don't think he likes me very much. Dad looked appropriately worried. Why not? He asked. Well, he shudders whenever he sees me go to my music lesson. I hoped that might sound weird enough to get him to ask another question. Come on, Dad, help me, I thought. Ask the right questions. But he just laughed. As long as Mr. Smith doesn't actually say anything, I don't think you can complain too much, he said. Maybe the guy just doesn't like music. Not everyone can be as cultured as we are, you know. He's probably just a Philistine. Yeah, I thought, a Philistine. From the planet Phyllis. But all I said out loud was, yeah, a Philistine. Figuring he had solved my problem, Dad turned back to his toothpicks. I wouldn't let it get to you, honey, he said. The school year's almost over. You can tough it out until then. Now you better scoot back to bed before your mother catches you out here. I gave him a hug and trudged back to my room. Now what? If I was going to do anything about this mess, I had to get some proof, and fast. I was still trying to figure that all out when Peter called. Nice try today, he said. You're really brave. I just hope Broxholm didn't figure out what we were up to. Great. That was the last thing in the world I wanted to think about. I wasn't brave, I said, just desperate. What I want to know is what are we going to do next? We've got to find some way to prove the truth about Broxholm. Actually, that's why I'm calling, said Peter. I wanted to know if you had a camera. Sure, why? He hesitated, then said, Well, are you game for another expedition in Broxholm's lair? I smiled, for the first time that day. So we can take a picture of Miss Schwartz? Peter, you're brilliant. Only when can we be sure he won't be there? How about during school? Peter, I can't skip school. My mother would kill me. Would you rather get kidnapped by aliens? He asked. I sighed. All right, I'll bring my camera to school on Monday. We'll talk about it then. I hung up and tried not to think about the fact that in 2 days I was going to go back into the alien's den. In fact, I spent most of the whole long, sleepless night trying not to think about it. So that's the end of chapter 11, guys. Chapter 12 is called Things Get Weirder. So make sure to listen to that.